Now, let's listen to another story. My hometown, the days of unpeace. Who sit on the branch of the bamboo branch? Let me tell you a true story. A story that happened to my grandmother in the early 1980s. Those days were the poorest days of our country. Also the days when the mountains and forests were still wild and the darkness seemed to hide things that no one dared to say. That's when I was born, and my hometown is a poor village in Tai Nguyen province. That day was the afternoon of the 30th of Tet. It was drizzling. The cold was so cold it felt like it could cut the skin and flesh. I remember that day because my grandmother had just received her wages from the cooperative where she worked all year. She was paid with 2 baskets of broken rice. She carried those 2 baskets, barefoot, with thin shoulders, and trudged home from the beginning of the village. At that time, my grandfather was still stationed far away. She had to support 8 children and an old mother alone, a total of 10 mouths, to feed in a dilapidated thatched house with bamboo walls. On the deserted village road, she passed by the house of an old man whom the whole village called Mr. Pal Ben. His real name was Z. He had been an artillery commander during the Dien Bien Phu era, so the villagers had gotten used to calling him that. Right next to his house was an ancient banyan tree. Next to it was the village. Well, places that had long been known as unclean. And at that banyan tree, my grandmother stopped. From above came down a cry, a muffled, choked cry of a man. But it was creepy. My grandmother raised her head and looked. Through the mist and the dark banyan leaves, she saw a man sitting precariously on the highest branch. That man was wearing a coffin, a court official's hat, shoes on his feet, his face as pale as wax, his eyes dull, looking straight down at her, shaking his head and crying. My grandmother, a native of Bac Giang, with a brave personality, wiped away her tears, raised her head and shouted, "Hey, who are you to sit there? Are you crazy? Don't go home for Tet." The man stopped crying. He stood up on a tall tree branch. It seemed like the wind could unhandle it, and said, "Your family helped me. This village is in trouble." That was all. A cold wind rolled in from the fields, howling like a howl. Before my grandmother could react, a burst of creepy laughter suddenly rang out. From inside the artilleryman's house, looking up, the figure in the coffin disappeared. The whole banyan tree was silent again. Only the sound of rain and dogs barking from afar could be heard. My grandmother turned pale. She quickly put down the 2 baskets of rice, tremblingly clasped her hands, and prayed in all directions. Then shouldered the rice, ran straight home. That night, New Year's Eve, in the small house at the end of the village, her children were gathered around the fire. My father, at that time about 10 years old, was holding the youngest child and coming out to welcome their mother. Looking at her pale face, she remained silent when asked anything. No one knew what had just happened until the night, she dreamed. The sound of horses, the sound of hooves, the sound of soldiers marching echoed in the yard. She stepped out of the door and saw a procession, armor, flags, and parasols, shining under the dim moonlight. In the middle of the procession was a man riding a pink horse, wearing a mandarin's hat. The man she met under the banyan tree. A servant stepped forward, handed her a set of clothes and said, "The family gets to enjoy the benefits." She woke up with a start. Her hand was still raised, as if receiving a shirt, soaked in sweat. But in my ears, the sound of horse hooves still echoed in the distance into the mist. The story did not end there. After that strange New Year's Eve, strange things began to happen to my house. Birds flew in from somewhere and filled the garden, chirping all day long. In early February, it rained heavily inside the house. My third daughter, who was taking a nap, suddenly sat up and talked in her sleep. "There is a distinguished guest at the front of the house. There is a distinguished guest at the front of the house." My grandmother was shocked when she heard that, and told my father to run out and see a jet-black puppy sitting and whining outside the gate. My father carried it in, and strangely, the third daughter immediately fell silent, no longer talking in her sleep. The old lady in the room softly said, "A dog is precious. Leave it there to be raised. From that day on, the dog stayed, and then another incident happened. That day, my father and my fifth uncle, born in 1971, went late-night fishing in the riverbank. On the way back, my fifth uncle said he was going to pee and fell behind. A while later, not seeing my younger brother catch up, my father turned around and my uncle was nowhere to be seen. Only a piece of fishing net left on the ground. The darkness, the cold wind, the dense bushes, calling for a long time. There was no response. My father ran back to inform the whole family. Grandma led the uncles and aunts to search. Not a trace. In the midst of the chaos, my third aunt screamed again. This time for real. Village order. The scream echoed in the middle of the night. Dogs barked loudly throughout the neighborhood. As soon as the scream ended, a cry echoed from the bushes. "Brother, you, save me! Help me! Help me! Help me!" Everyone rushed over. Inside was Uncle Five sitting on the floor, his face dirty, his mouth full of dirt. He was crying and shaking. Then a gecko in the golden crawled out of his shirt, crying loudly in the middle of the night. It quietly disappeared into the pile of rocks behind the house. My grandmother quickly bowed and asked him what had happened. He trembled and said, I peed on someone's head. Someone grabbed me by the neck, forced me to stuff dirt in my mouth, and they wanted to take me away. And the last thing that made my grandmother shiver was what he said. Luckily, someone shouted something very loudly and chased him away. She asked who. He shook his head. I couldn't see his face. I only remembered someone shouted, "Village order." The next morning, my grandmother, my father, and my grandfather went to the riverbank, turning over the place where he peed. They found a corner of an exposed ceramic urinal, deep under the bushes, a lost grave. No one knew who it was. My grandmother burned incense, apologized to the deceased, and then reburied him properly. From then on, things gradually calmed down. The year after that incident, my uncle became much quieter and was no longer for village order. The scream of my third aunt that year, a scream that no one could explain. She never spoke about it, and until now, it is still an unsolved mystery. There are things that do not belong to this world, but if we respect them and keep our hearts kind, they will not harm us. My grandmother often said that. Whenever she recounted the night when a man wearing a Mandarin S hat sat on a banyan tree. Well, folks, that's the end of today's story. I don't know if you can believe it or not, but these stories actually happened in my grandmother's life, and every time she recounts, she always reminds me to behave well and respectfully to everyone, especially the elderly and the dead. So everyone, please behave well. Good people, good deeds will have good results. Bad people, bad things will have bad results. After the old lady's funeral, it seemed like everything would end, but it didn't. The following rainy night, a villager died in an unprecedented way. The victim was Mrs. Baisuyu, who lived next to my grandmother's house. She was a widow, a rice picker, a nosy person, and liked to curse and insult others, especially my grandmother's family. And that night, the wind was very strong. The wind that the elderly called grave-twisting wind. The wind was strange, cold, blowing in the opposite direction, as if it was coming from the tomb. The whole village lost power, and it was pitch black. And that very night, Mrs. Bay died hanging from the zoin tree in front of her house. The strange thing was, her feet were still touching the ground. Her arms hung limply, as if she was not resisting. Her eyes rolled back, her mouth gaped open, as if someone was strangling her from behind, the villagers rumored. She heard someone calling from outside the gate, opened the door, and disappeared. The next morning, she was found hanging there. After that death, people started talking about the shadow in the coffin, the thing that had haunted my grandmother. Some people saw a black figure riding a horse across the alley at midnight. There was no sound of horse hooves, only the sound of fingernails scraping on the dirt wall, rustling, dragging. Mrs. Bay's grandson, after the funeral, started to show strange signs. Only 10 years old, always so smart. Now he just sat in the corner of the yard, face down on the ground, crying and laughing at the same time. No answer to any questions. But as soon as it got dark, it repeated the same sentence. He's back. He rode his horse to call. Mom didn't open the door, so he climbed in from the roof. It spoke like a programmed machine. Every time it finished speaking, it raised its hand, scratched its face, until it bled. My grandmother turned pale when she heard the story, took the beetle and areca nuts and the 3 strands of hair she still had, brought them to the banyan tree where she had met the official, buried them, clasped her hands and prayed. Please go away. Your children are foolish, don't know manners, and don't dare to keep the blessing anymore. The wind blew in gusts. The banyan tree shook loudly, even though there was no tornado. From afar, the sound of horse hooves echoed. From that day on, people in the village continuously went crazy. All of them were people who had argued, had conflicts with my grandmother, or had made fun of the officials sitting on the banyan tree incident. One person ran naked in the middle of the night, shouting, "I am a high-ranking official," then scratched his back until it bled. One person kept mumbling to someone sitting on the roof. One person died suddenly in his sleep, face down on the ground, his mouth full of clay as if stuffed in. Every time someone died, the village would hear the sound of dogs howling 3 times. Just like the day my grandmother saw the shadow of a person on the banyan tree, and then something that only came out at night began to appear. My grandmother's house back then had 3 windows. 2 were always open to let in the wind. The third, the window of the old room where my grandmother used to sleep, was always closed. Until one day, it opened by itself. At exactly 3 a.m., Mr. woke up because of the cold. She saw the third window wide open. The wind blew in, carrying with it the stench of newly dug grave soil. She was about to close the door when she saw a shadow hovering outside the door. A shadow, headless, sleeves as loose as a coffin, standing still. She was so scared that she tried to scream. Her mouth was choked. She couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She could only watch until that shadow slowly walked through the door and into the house. But the door was still closed. The very next morning, Grandma took rice, coal, salt, 9 needles, and a dull knife, placed them at the exact location of the window, and then nailed it 9 times into the frame. Then she took a red string and wrapped it around the house 3 times. No one was allowed to go near that window again. From that day on, the whole family slept in the same room. Grandma later told me he belonged to a local official who was wrongly convicted. He died without a grave. That place used to be a sacrificial land. I didn't know. I violated the taboo. And what worried her the most? That blessing is a blessing from death, a blessing from resentment. Whoever enjoys it must pay. If they don't pay with money, they must pay with blood. From then until now, every year when the wind blows in the opposite direction through my village, the elderly still tell each other, "Don't ye go past the banyan tree at the hour of the rooster. If you hear the sound of horse hooves on the night of the 30th, then bow your head and avoid it, because he is coming back to see who still owes this year." As for me, every time I think about those stories, I can't help but shudder. Because sometimes we don't know what's inside the closet. We don't know what evil spirits are hiding in our house. And sometimes what we think is a blessing is actually a curse. If you have ever experienced anything similar, please share it below so everyone can listen to it. Now let's move on to the next story. A woman who sleeps while she's dead. This is the story that my brother witnessed. When I was 7 years old, my brother was 12. My parents divorced, and my dad married a second wife. His new wife had a daughter named Ngok from a previous relationship. We all moved to live with my uncle. So my brother and I were left with my grandparents. We live in an old house with a very big yard. There's a well in the yard. To get to the well, you have to pass through a corridor. I remember one day I was playing alone in the yard and my brother was inside the house watching TV. Suddenly, my brother shouted, "Quickly, come see what's going on." I wondered what happened. I followed him to the well. There was a girl standing by the well, pulling up the rope. She was wearing a very beautiful white dress and a white hat. Her back was facing us, so we couldn't see her face. We were very curious, so we decided to go closer to talk to her. As we got closer, my brother was about to say hello when she quickly turned around. But I was stunned when I saw her face. Her face was very pale, like the face of a corpse. Her lips were black, like she had been dead for many days. Her eyes were also black, lifeless, just like the eyes of a corpse. And then she said in a very eerie voice, "Give me some water to drink." My brother was so scared that he grabbed my hand and we both ran away as fast as we could. I remember running and screaming, "She wants to drink water. She wants to drink water." After that day, I never saw that girl again. But sometimes at midnight, I would hear the sound of a rope being pulled. I would wake up from my sleep and cry. Many years later, I asked my brother if he remembered the girl. He said, "How could I forget?" That's why I haven't gone back to my hometown yet. I'm afraid I might run into her again. Perhaps she is waiting for someone to pull up the rope so she can climb out of the well and continue living her life. Or maybe she is waiting for someone to drink water from the well, so she can take that person's life and become human again. So whenever you go to a strange place, you have to be careful. Don't trust anyone. You don't know whose soul is hiding in that person's body. Have you ever seen something in a mirror that doesn't exist in real life? I did. And from that day on, I never dared to look straight into the mirror again. This is a story from a subscriber. I am a third-year student studying in Ho Chi Minh City. At that time, I was preparing for my internship, so I moved to a new place for convenience. An acquaintance introduced me to a room at the end of the old dormitory, priced at only 1.5 million VND. Extremely cheap, with an area of over 25 square meters. The room was a bit old. The walls were moldy, and the lights kept flickering. But I thought I only needed to stay for a few months, so I saved as much as I could. There was only one thing that haunted me a bit. The bathroom had a mirror, and every time I entered, I always felt like someone was looking at me from behind. The third night of my stay, after taking a shower, I happened to glance into the mirror, and I saw a blurry face reflected in the mirror. Big eyes, loose hair, but it wasn't me. I turned around. No one. I turned back to the mirror. Nothing. I reassured myself. It's just an illusion, due to fatigue. But the next morning, a patch of steam left a clear handprint on the mirror. 5 long fingers, sharp nails. I didn't touch it. That day, I messaged my friend in Da Nang. I asked him to visit me to take some photos. He lived quite far, so it took him about 4 hours to get there. After school, he came to my place. We ate dinner together, chatted, and then we went to my room. He looked around and asked me why I chose this room. I said it was because it was cheap. Suddenly, he noticed the mirror. Your room is a little dark. Hey, what's that behind you? Who's looking at the camera? I turned around. No one. I thought he was joking, but he paled and hung up, then sent me a screenshot. In the photos behind me, in the bathroom mirror at the end of the hallway, there was a woman with her head bowed, long hair, and no eyes. I told the story to my elderly neighbor next door. He hesitated. I rented the same room where there was a murder. There was a depressed girl who committed suicide in the bathroom, but when the police arrived, the mirror in the room was smashed. And the scary thing was that they couldn't find her head and the mirror. There were fingernail prints all over the glass, as if someone was screaming in there. He paused. After that, many people rented the room, but they all went crazy. No one could stand it anymore, and they all left. And now it's become an abandoned room again. My friend and I planned to stay there for a whole week, but after hearing that, we packed up and left that same day. On the way out, I wanted to take the mirror apart. My friend stopped me. "Don't break it. It'll bring bad luck." I said okay, but secretly, I still took the mirror apart. I intended to throw it away, but the moment I removed the first piece of glass, I heard a crash and the mirror cracked. And from the inside, I saw myself looking back, but with a crooked smile on my lips. I immediately left the room, but my friend said, "It seems like from then on, in every video call, you always have someone standing in the dark behind you." After ending the call, I noticed a figure standing in the corner of the room, wearing a white dress and covering her face with her hands. I blinked and she was gone. Maybe it was just my imagination, I thought. But one day, when I was video calling my parents, they asked, "Who is it? Why is someone blocking the camera?" I turned around. No one. I waved to them. But in the camera, it seemed like I had another hand behind me, grabbing my shoulder. "Don't be silly," my mom said. "There's no one there. Hurry up and talk to us." But after hanging up, I was still very scared. Every time I made a video call, there was always a figure standing behind me, sometimes standing by the bed or leaning against the wall. Sometimes it was just a vague shadow. Sometimes it was a woman in a white dress. And sometimes it was the face in the mirror. I tried to ignore it, but whenever I did, it seemed to appear more often. So I decided to investigate. One afternoon, I asked my friend to come over and help me record the video. While setting up, I kept feeling like someone was watching me. Finally, everything was ready. I started recording. This is what my room looks like. Nothing, right? This is the bed, the desk, the wardrobe, and this is the bathroom mirror. Do you see anyone behind me? I paused, waiting for a response. But if you think carefully, maybe there really is someone behind me. You see, this is an abandoned house. Many people say it's haunted, and not only me. Many other tenants in the dormitory have seen strange things happen. For example, sometimes when everyone leaves the house, we hear voices from the rooms, footsteps on the stairs, or doors opening and closing. Sometimes when someone is washing their hair in the bathroom, they will see a girl's face reflected in the mirror. But then when they turn around, no one is there. And sometimes they see the ghost of a girl in a white dress sitting on the stairs crying. Everyone thought it was a normal ghost, but I think maybe it isn't. Maybe it's attached to the mirror. Maybe it isn't a ghost, but some kind of evil spirit. I paused again, my voice becoming softer. It's been here for a long time. If you want to see it, I recommend you should go to the dormitory to try your luck. I ended the recording. However, the moment I clicked stop, a white figure appeared beside me. She slowly raised her head, revealing a pale face with disheveled hair, and her eyes were hollow and empty. She stared at me for a few seconds, then slowly walked toward the mirror and disappeared. My friend and I were both terrified, but we couldn't run away. We had to film until the end, and then the screen went black. As soon as we heard the sound of the shutter, the girl rushed out of the mirror and stood right in front of us. Her expression changed drastically. She had a malicious grin on her face, revealing sharp teeth. She reached out a hand, nails like hooks, and dragged us into the mirror. Then everything turned black. The next day I woke up in my bed, safe and sound, but I couldn't find my friend anywhere. I was worried and called his phone number, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic surged through me. I got out of bed and ran to the bathroom. The moment I glanced into the mirror, I saw him. His face was pale, eyes wide with fear, and he was trapped inside the mirror. Behind him was a dark abyss. "Help me," he mouthed, his voice muffled as if coming from afar. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach out and grab him. He struggled, but it was no use. His entire body was gradually being pulled into the mirror. I cried out, tears streaming down my face. Then suddenly, the mirror shattered. Glass fell to the ground. But my friend completely vanished. I collapsed on the floor, distraught. Just as I lost hope, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered and heard my friend's voice. "Are you okay? Last night, Before he could finish, the line went dead. I called again, but it went straight to voicemail. I kept replaying what my friend said, trying to make sense of it. Was I dreaming, or was it real? The mirror was shattered. But where did my friend go? Did that evil spirit devour him? I don't know. No one knows. To this day, I still live in fear. I can't sleep at night, always hearing strange noises. Sometimes I catch myself smiling eerily. Is it because of the spirit's influence? Perhaps. The scariest part is that I can still see my friend's face in the mirror. He's trapped there, forever reaching out to me. Should I close the mirror? Should I smash it? Maybe I should have done that from the start. If only I hadn't ignored the signs. Maybe my friend wouldn't have vanished into that mirror realm, but now what? What should I do? I am truly haunted by the mirror. I am truly haunted by the mirror.